Boston drowned beneath October rain the night Angela Vale discovered that marrying a monster might be the only way to stay alive. Dominic Vane didn't just own hotels and shipping companies. He owned judges, senators, and the kind of silence that made men disappear. Her dying cousin had begged him for one impossible favor: protect Angela, even if it meant marrying her. She thought it would be temporary, a cold arrangement, nothing more. But the moment Dominic looked at her like she mattered, Angela realized the real danger wasn't his empire. It was falling for a man the world called untouchable. If you want to see how far love can survive in the darkest corners of power, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Angela Vale had spent 32 years perfecting the art of being invisible. She moved through rooms with her shoulders slightly hunched, her voice barely above a whisper, her entire existence calibrated to avoid drawing attention. At the Harborview Hotel front desk, she smiled politely at guests who looked through her like she was wallpaper. She wore secondhand coats with loose threads. She ate lunch alone in the break room, reading novels with cracked spines that cost $1 at thrift stores. Her family treated her like an obligation they resented fulfilling. Aunt Evelyn's Christmas dinners always had one chair too few, and Angela spent those evenings perched on a kitchen stool while her cousin Savannah laughed too loudly about vacations Angela would never take. No one asked how she was doing, no one cared. She had learned early that being overlooked was safer than being noticed for the wrong reasons. Then Elias got sick. Elias Mercer was the only person in the Vale family who had ever looked at Angela like she was human. He was her second cousin, older, sharper, someone who had clawed his way out of Boston's rougher neighborhoods and made something of himself before lymphoma started eating him alive. He called her once a week, sent her books, remembered her birthday when everyone else forgot. When the cancer spread to his brain, he asked Angela to visit him at Mass General. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and slow death. Elias lay propped against pillows, his body wasted down to angles and shadows. His skin had gone the color of old paper, but his eyes were still fierce. "You deserve better than what they give you," he rasped. Angela sat beside the bed, hands folded in her lap. "I'm fine, Elias." "Bullshit," he coughed wetly. "You're 32 and you're still apologizing for existing." She didn't have an answer for that. Elias reached for her hand. His fingers felt like bird bones wrapped in tissue. "I'm leaving you money," he said. "Not much. Enough to get you started somewhere new. But there's a condition." Angela frowned. "What kind of condition?" Elias's mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile if he'd had the strength for it. "I need you to meet someone first." "Elias?" "Dominic Vane." Angela went still. She had heard that name before. Everyone in Boston had. Dominic Vane was the kind of man people mentioned in lowered voices. The kind whose name appeared in newspapers only in connection with federal investigations that somehow never went anywhere. He owned luxury hotels, private clubs, shipping companies. He threw charity galas where senators and CEOs wrote checks they could never explain to their accountants. And beneath all of it, there were rumors. Whispers about money laundering, offshore accounts, shipments that disappeared into the Atlantic. Men who crossed him tended to lose contracts, licenses, sometimes entire businesses. A city councilman who tried to block one of his construction permits ended up resigning after a scandal involving underage prostitutes, a scandal that materialized out of nowhere and vanished just as quickly once the councilman was gone. Dominic Vane was untouchable, dangerous, and Elias wanted her to meet him. "Why?" Angela whispered. Elias squeezed her hand weakly. "Because I trust him, and because he owes me." "Owes you what?" "His life." Elias coughed again, harder this time. "I pulled him out of a burning car when we were kids. He's never forgotten, and he won't forget this either." Angela shook her head. "I don't understand what you're asking me to do." Elias looked at her for a long moment, his expression softening into something almost sad. "I'm asking you to let him protect you." "From what?" "From ending up exactly where you are now for the rest of your life." The words hit like a slap. Angela pulled her hand back. "I'm fine, Elias. I don't need—" "You're not fine." His voice turned harsh. "You're surviving." That's not the same thing. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the linoleum floor. I should go. Angela, I'll come back tomorrow. She didn't. Elias died 3 days later, alone, in the early hours of a rainy morning. The funeral was small. Aunt Evelyn cried loudly and theatrically while Savannah stood beside her looking bored. Angela sat in the back row of the chapel, numb, clutching a crumpled tissue she never used. After the service, a man approached her in the parking lot. He was tall, over 6 feet, with dark hair swept back from a sharp, angular face. His suit looked expensive in a way that didn't announce itself, the kind of tailoring that cost more than Angela made in 3 months. His eyes were pale gray, cold and focused, the kind of eyes that saw everything and gave away nothing. Angela Vale? She turned, startled. Yes? He extended a hand. Dominic Vane. Her breath caught. Up close, he was even more unsettling. There was something predatory in the way he stood, perfectly still, perfectly controlled, like a man who had learned to weaponize patience. Angela shook his hand quickly and let go. I didn't expect to meet you here. Elias was important to me. Dominic's voice was low, quiet, almost gentle. It didn't match the rest of him. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. Silence stretched between them. Dominic glanced toward the chapel, where mourners were filing out into the drizzle. Can we talk somewhere private? Angela hesitated. Every instinct told her to say no, to walk away, to get into her beat-up Honda and drive back to her cramped studio apartment and forget this conversation ever happened. But Elias had trusted this man, and Elias had never been wrong about people. Okay, she said quietly. They ended up at a coffee shop 2 blocks away, one of those places with exposed brick and overpriced lattes. Dominic ordered black coffee. Angela ordered tea she didn't drink. They sat across from each other in a corner booth. Dominic studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Elias made me promise something before he died, he said finally. Angela wrapped both hands around her teacup. What kind of promise? To protect you. She blinked. Protect me from what? From ending up invisible. The words landed hard. Angela looked down at her tea. I don't need protection. That's not what Elias thought. Elias was sick. He wasn't thinking clearly. Dominic leaned back slightly, his gaze never leaving her face. He was the clearest I've ever seen him. He knew exactly what he was asking. Angela's throat tightened. And what was he asking? Dominic's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He asked me to marry you. The world tilted. Angela stared at him, certain she had misheard. What? He wanted me to marry you, what? Dominic repeated calmly. For 1 year. Give you access to resources, connections, a foundation to build something better than what you have now. Angela's hands started trembling. That's insane. It's practical. She stood abruptly, nearly knocking over her tea. I'm not some charity case you can fix with money. Dominic didn't move. I never said you were. Then why would you even consider this? Because I owed Elias everything. His voice stayed level. And because he believed you deserved more than what the world has given you. Angela felt tears burning behind her eyes. I can't. I won't. There are no strings, Dominic said quietly. The marriage would be legal but temporary. 1 year. After that, you walk away with financial security and the kind of reputation that opens doors. No one ever has to know it was anything but real. And what do you get out of it? Dominic's expression shifted slightly, something almost like pain flickering across his features before disappearing. Peace, he said, knowing I kept my word to a man who saved my life. Angela sank back into the booth, her mind spinning. This was insane. Marrying a stranger, a dangerous stranger, just because her dying cousin had asked him to protect her. It sounded like something out of a melodramatic novel, not real life. But real life had been 32 years of invisibility. 32 years of hearing her aunt sigh heavily whenever Angela walked into a room. 32 years of watching other women get promoted, get married, get noticed, while she remained stuck behind a hotel front desk answering phones for people who would never remember her name. Dominic was offering her an exit, temporary, transactional, but an exit nonetheless. I need to think about it, she whispered. Dominic nodded once. He pulled a business card from his jacket and slid it across the table. Take your time, he said. But, Angela? She looked up. Elias didn't make this request because he pitied you. He made it because he saw something in you that no one else bothered to look for. He stood, left cash on the table for both their drinks, and walked out into the rain. Angela sat alone in the coffee shop for another hour, staring at the business card. By the time she left, she had already made her decision. Psych. The courthouse wedding happened on a Thursday afternoon. No family, no friends, just Angela, Dominic, a judge who looked like he asked too few questions, and two witnesses pulled from the hallway outside. Angela wore a simple navy dress she had bought on sale 3 years ago. Dominic wore the same dark suit he had worn to Elias's funeral. The whole ceremony took less than 10 minutes. When the judge pronounced them married, Dominic didn't kiss her. He shook her hand. We'll make this work, he said quietly. Angela nodded, her throat too tight to speak. Afterward, Dominic drove her to his penthouse in the financial district. The building was all glass and steel, the kind of place with a doorman who looked like he screened visitors for net worth. The elevator required a key card. The hallway on the top floor was silent, carpeted in thick gray that swallowed sound. Dominic unlocked the door and stepped aside. Angela walked into a space that looked like it belonged in an architecture magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Boston Harbor. The furniture was minimal, expensive leather, dark wood, nothing soft or welcoming. The kitchen was all marble and stainless steel. Everything gleamed. It felt like a museum, cold, untouched, beautiful in a way that made Angela afraid to sit down. Dominic set her suitcases, both of them, everything she owned, near the door. You'll have the guest suite, he said. It has its own bathroom, privacy. Angela turned to face him. Where will you sleep? The master bedroom, other side of the penthouse. He gestured vaguely down a hallway. You won't even know I'm here most nights. I work late. She nodded slowly. Dominic walked to the kitchen and poured himself a drink. Whiskey, neat. He didn't offer her one. There are rules, he said, his back still to her. What kind of rules? He turned, glass in hand. In public, we're married. You wear the ring. You attend events with me when necessary. You let people believe this is real. And in private? In private, you do whatever you want. He took a sip. I won't touch you. I won't ask questions. You're free to come and go as you please. Angela's chest tightened. And after a year? After a year, we file for divorce. Quiet, clean. You walk away with $500,000 and a reputation that will get you hired anywhere you want to work. $500,000. Angela had never seen that much money in her life. She could go back to school, move to a different city, start over completely. But standing in this sterile, beautiful penthouse, looking at a man who had just married her out of obligation, Angela felt something cold settle in her stomach. Why are you really doing this? She asked. Dominic set his glass down on the counter. I told you I owed Elias. That's not enough. His jaw tightened. It has to be. Angela took a step closer. Did Elias tell you why he wanted this? Why he thought I needed protecting? Dominic's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Something almost like guilt. He said you deserve better than being forgotten. Angela's throat burned. And you believed him? I did. Why? Dominic looked at her for a long moment, his gaze steady and unreadable. Because I know what it's like to be invisible, he said quietly. And I know what it costs. Before Angela could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his expression hardening instantly. I have to go, he said. There's food in the fridge. The security code is written on the counter. Don't answer the door for anyone. Dominic, but he was already moving, grabbing his coat, his keys, his phone. He paused at the door, glancing back at her one last time. Welcome home, Angela. Then he was gone. Angela stood alone in the enormous penthouse, the city glittering below her like a galaxy she didn't belong to. She walked slowly to the guest suite. It was bigger than her entire studio apartment. The bed was king-sized, covered in white linens that looked like they had never been slept in. The bathroom had a soaking tub and heated floors. Angela sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the ring on her finger. Gold. Simple. Expensive. A lie she had agreed to wear. She thought about Elias dying alone in that hospital room, trying to save her one last time. She thought about Dominic, a man who had married her out of loyalty to a ghost. And she thought about herself, 32 years old, sitting in a stranger's penthouse, wondering if she had just made the worst mistake of her life. Outside, rain began to fall. Angela lay back on the bed, still fully dressed, and stared at the ceiling. She didn't cry. She was too numb for that. But somewhere deep inside, beneath the shock and the fear and the disbelief, something else stirred. A tiny, fragile spark of hope. Maybe Elias had been right. Maybe she did deserve better. Maybe this insane arrangement would actually work. Angela closed her eyes and let the rain lull her into an uneasy sleep. She didn't hear Dominic return hours later. Didn't hear him pause outside her door, his hand resting briefly on the frame before he walked away. Didn't see the way his expression softened when he looked at her suitcases still sitting untouched by the front door. Dominic Vane had made a promise to a dying man. But as he poured himself another drink and stood at the window overlooking the harbor, he wondered if Elias had known what he was asking. Because protecting Angela was one thing. But the moment she had looked at him in that courthouse and said, "I do," with her voice trembling and her hands shaking, Dominic had felt something crack open inside him, something he had buried years ago, something dangerous. He drained his glass and set it down hard on the counter. 1 year. He could survive 1 year. He had survived worse. But as he walked to his bedroom and closed the door, Dominic couldn't shake the feeling that Elias Mercer had just handed him the one thing more dangerous than any enemy he'd ever faced: a reason to care. Angela woke to the smell of coffee. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then the unfamiliar weight of the expensive sheets, the faint hum of city traffic far below, the sheer size of the room, it all came rushing back. She was married to Dominic Vane. She sat up slowly, her body stiff from sleeping in her dress. Pale morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The rain had stopped, leaving the city washed clean and gleaming. Angela showered quickly, grateful for the privacy of the guest bathroom. She changed into jeans and a sweater, brushed her hair, avoided looking at herself in the mirror for too long. When she finally emerged, she found Dominic in the kitchen. He was dressed differently than yesterday. Black t-shirt, dark jeans, barefoot. His hair was damp. He looked younger this way, less intimidating, almost human. He glanced up when she entered. "Coffee?" "Yes, please." He poured her a cup without asking how she took it, then slid the sugar and cream across the counter. Angela sat on one of the high stools, wrapping both hands around the mug. They didn't speak. Dominic leaned against the counter, scrolling through his phone with one hand while sipping his own coffee. The silence wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't hostile either. It was just there. Finally, Angela cleared her throat. "Do you have rules about the kitchen?" Dominic looked up. "What? Can I use it? Cook, or is there—" "Angela." He set his phone down. "This is your home now. Use whatever you want." She nodded, feeling ridiculous. Dominic studied her for a moment. "You don't have to tiptoe around me." "I'm not—" "You are." His voice was quiet but firm. "You apologized 3 times yesterday for existing. I'm not your family. I'm not going to punish you for taking up space." Angela's cheeks flushed. "I didn't realize I was doing that." "I know." Dominic picked up his coffee again. "That's the problem." Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his expression hardening. "I have a meeting," he said. "I'll be gone most of the day. If you need anything, my assistant's number is on the fridge." "Okay." He started to leave, then paused. "Angela?" "Yes?" "You start work at the hotel again Monday, right?" She blinked, surprised he knew that. "Yes?" Dominic's jaw tightened slightly. "You don't have to go back. I need the job." "No," he said quietly. "You don't." "Dominic, I'm not telling you what to do," he interrupted. "But you're my wife now. Legally. That means you have access to my accounts. You don't need to work a front desk job for minimum wage anymore." Angela's stomach twisted. "I can't just take your money." "It's not taking. It's part of the agreement." The agreement was for after the year is over. Dominic looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable flickering across his face. The agreement, he said slowly, was that I protect you. I can't do that if you're still stuck in the same place Elias found you. Then he left. Angela sat alone in the kitchen, her coffee going cold, her mind spinning. She thought about going back to the Harborview Hotel. Thought about standing behind that desk while guests treated her like furniture. Thought about her aunt and Savannah inevitably finding out about the marriage and showing up to humiliate her in front of everyone. Dominic was right. She didn't have to go back. But quitting felt like admitting she needed him, and Angela had spent her entire life refusing to need anyone. She spent the rest of the day unpacking her suitcases. It didn't take long. 2 suitcases didn't hold much. A few changes of clothes, some books, a jewelry box with nothing valuable inside, a photo of her and Elias from 5 years ago. She placed the photo on the nightstand in the guest suite. Elias smiled up at her from the frame, looking healthy and whole. "I hope you knew what you were doing," Angela whispered. That night, Dominic didn't come home until after midnight. Angela was still awake, reading in the living room when she heard the elevator ding. The penthouse door opened. Dominic stepped inside and Angela's breath caught. His shirt was torn, blood stained his collar. His knuckles were raw and bruised. He froze when he saw her. "You're still up," he said quietly. Angela set her book aside, her heart pounding. "What happened?" "Work." "Dominic, it's nothing." He started toward his bedroom, moving carefully, like his ribs hurt. Angela stood. "You're bleeding." "I'm fine." "You're not fine." He stopped, his back still to her. "Angela, go to bed." "Let me help." "I don't need—" "I'm a nurse," she lied. Dominic turned slowly, one eyebrow raised. "No, you're not." Angela's cheeks flushed. "Okay, no, but I know basic first aid, and you're dripping blood on your expensive floor." For a moment she thought he would refuse. Then he sighed, a sound so tired it made her chest ache. "Fine." Angela led him to the kitchen. She made him sit on one of the stools while she grabbed the first aid kit from under the sink. Up close, the damage was worse. A split lip, a bruise blooming along his jaw, scraped knuckles, and beneath the torn shirt, more bruises, dark purple spreading across his ribs. Angela worked quickly, cleaning the blood from his face with steady hands. Dominic watched her the entire time, his pale eyes unreadable. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "I know. Most people would be scared right now." Angela paused, antiseptic-soaked cotton hovering near his split lip. "Of you?" "Of what I am." She met his gaze directly. "What are you?" Dominic's jaw tightened. "Dangerous." "So is crossing the street," Angela said. "Doesn't mean I stopped doing it." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe. Or something closer to respect. Angela finished cleaning his face, then carefully lifted his torn shirt to examine his ribs. The bruises were worse than she thought. "You should see a doctor," she whispered. "I've had worse." "That's not reassuring." Dominic caught her wrist gently. "Angela." She looked up. "Thank you," he said quietly. Their faces were inches apart. Angela could smell whiskey and blood and something darker, smoke maybe, or gunpowder. She should have pulled away, should have put distance between them. Instead, she found herself staring at his mouth, at the split in his lower lip she had just cleaned. "You're welcome," she whispered. Dominic released her wrist and stood abruptly. "I should shower," he said, his voice rougher than before. "Okay." He left without another word. Angela stood alone in the kitchen, her hands trembling. She cleaned up the first aid supplies, threw away the bloodied cotton, washed her hands twice. Then she went back to her room and closed the door. She didn't sleep. Because somewhere between cleaning blood from a dangerous man's face and feeling his hand on her wrist, Angela had realized something terrifying. This wasn't just an arrangement anymore. This was something she couldn't control. And for the first time in her life, Angela wasn't sure if that scared her or thrilled her. Angela stopped going to the hotel. She told herself it was temporary, just a few days to settle into the penthouse, to figure out how to navigate this strange new marriage. But 3 days became a week, A week became 2. And every morning when she thought about calling her manager to explain, something stopped her. Pride, maybe. Or fear that if she went back, she'd never leave again. Dominic didn't push. He left early, came home late, and in the brief moments they crossed paths, he treated her with careful distance. Polite, civil, like a stranger sharing an elevator. But the bruises on his face faded slowly, and Angela noticed new ones appearing. Fresh cuts on his knuckles. A limp he tried to hide. Dark circles under his eyes that makeup couldn't cover. Whatever business Dominic conducted in the shadows, it was getting worse. On the 14th night of their marriage, Angela woke to voices. Low, urgent, coming from somewhere deeper in the penthouse. She sat up slowly, her heart hammering. The clock on the nightstand read 2:47 a.m. Angela slipped out of bed and crept to her door, pressing her ear against the wood. Don't care what Marcus thinks. Dominic's voice, cold and sharp. He had his chance to negotiate. That window closed. A second voice, male, rougher. He's not going to accept this quietly. You're asking for a war. I'm ending one. By burning half the waterfront? Silence. Then Dominic, quieter now. Get out. I said get out. Footsteps, the elevator chiming, then nothing. Angela stood frozen outside her door, her pulse racing. She should go back to bed. Pretend she hadn't heard anything. This wasn't her business. This was exactly the kind of world she had agreed not to ask questions about. But her hands were already turning the doorknob. She found Dominic standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the harbor. He had a glass of whiskey in one hand. His other hand was braced against the window, knuckles white with tension. He didn't turn when she entered. You should be asleep, he said quietly. Angela crossed her arms. So should you. Can't. Why not? Dominic took a long drink, draining the glass. Because every time I close my eyes, I see things I'd rather forget. Angela moved closer, her bare feet silent on the cold floor. What kind of things? The kind that prove Elias was wrong about me. Wrong how? Dominic finally turned to look at her. In the dim light, his face looked carved from stone, beautiful and brutal at the same time. He thought I was capable of protecting you, Dominic said, but protection requires control, and I'm running out of both. Angela studied him carefully. What happened tonight? Nothing you need to worry about. Dominic. Angela. His voice hardened. This is the part where you don't ask questions, remember? She flinched. Dominic's expression shifted, regret flickering across his features before disappearing. I'm sorry, he said quietly. That came out wrong. Did it? Angela's throat tightened. Or is this just a reminder that I'm not actually your wife? Just some obligation you're stuck with for 11 more months? Dominic set his glass down hard on the nearest table. You think that's what you are to me? I don't know what I am to you. You barely look at me. You leave before I wake up. You come home bleeding and won't tell me why. Her voice cracked. I'm living in your house like a ghost you're too polite to acknowledge. That's not... Dominic dragged a hand through his hair, frustration radiating off him. I'm trying to protect you. From what? From me. The words echoed in the silence. Angela stared at him. Dominic's chest rose and fell rapidly, his control finally cracking. You want to know what happened tonight? I put 3 men in the hospital because they tried to move product through my territory without permission. I broke someone's arm because he looked at me wrong. I burned a warehouse to the ground because the owner thought he could negotiate with threats instead of cash. He stepped toward her, and Angela's breath caught. That's who I am, Dominic said, his voice low and dangerous. That's what I do. And the further you stay from it, the safer you are. Angela lifted her chin. I didn't ask to be safe. I asked to be seen. You are seen. No, she shook her head. You see an obligation. You see Elias's dying wish, but you don't see me. Dominic moved so fast, Angela barely registered it. Suddenly, he was right in front of her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off his body. I see you, he said, his voice rough. I see the way you wrap both hands around coffee mugs because you're always cold. I see how you dog-ear pages in books instead of using bookmarks. I see you flinch every time someone raises their voice because your family spent 30 years teaching you that you weren't worth listening to. Angela's breath hitched. I see all of it, Dominic continued, and it's driving me insane. Why? His jaw clenched. Because I promised Elias I'd protect you, not complicate your life, not drag you deeper into my world. And every time I look at you, I want to break that promise. The air between them felt electric. Angela's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. What if I want you to break it? She whispered. Dominic's eyes darkened. Angela. I'm tired of being protected, she interrupted. I'm tired of being handled like I'm fragile. I married you. I moved into your home. I cleaned blood off your face and didn't ask questions even though every instinct told me to run. Her voice dropped. So don't tell me you're protecting me by pretending I don't exist. For a long moment, Dominic just stared at her. Then he reached out slowly and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was so gentle it made Angela's chest ache. You're not an obligation, he said quietly. You never were. Then what am I? Dominic's thumb traced her cheekbone. You're the thing I didn't know I was missing until Elias put you in front of me. Angela's eyes burned. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. She should step back, should put distance between them before this became something neither of them could control. Instead, Angela leaned into his touch. I'm not going anywhere, she whispered. Dominic's hand stilled against her face. You should. I know. This won't end well. Maybe not. Angela. She kissed him. It was clumsy and desperate and nothing like the controlled distance they'd maintained for 2 weeks. Dominic froze for half a second, then kissed her back with the kind of hunger that felt like drowning. His hands gripped her waist. Angela's fingers tangled in his hair. The kiss deepened, turned rougher, all teeth and need and something dangerous neither of them could name. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. This changes everything, he said hoarsely. Angela's hands were still fisted in his shirt. I know. We can't go back after this. I don't want to go back. Dominic pulled away slightly, searching her face. You don't know what you're saying. Yes, I do. Angela's voice was steady despite the trembling in her hands. I've spent my whole life being careful, being small, disappearing so no one would notice me. And I'm done. Angela, I want this, she interrupted. I want you, even if it's messy, even if it's dangerous, even if it only lasts 11 more months. Dominic's expression cracked, something raw and vulnerable breaking through his carefully maintained control. It won't last 11 months, he said quietly. Angela's stomach dropped. What? Because I'm not letting you go after a year. His hands came up to frame her face. I'm not letting you go ever. Then he kissed her again, slower this time, like he was memorizing the shape of her mouth. Angela melted into him, her entire world narrowing to the feel of his hands on her skin, the taste of whiskey on his tongue, the way he held her like she was something precious instead of broken. They made it to his bedroom, barely. Clothes came off in between kisses. Angela's sweater, Dominic's shirt, her hand shaking as she traced the bruises still mottled across his ribs. Does it hurt? She whispered. I don't care. They fell into bed together, urgent and clumsy and achingly real. Afterward, Angela lay curled against Dominic's chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. His fingers traced lazy patterns along her spine. We're going to regret this in the morning, she murmured. Dominic's arm tightened around her. No, we won't. How do you know? Because I've been regretting not doing this since the day I married you. Angela smiled against his skin. That's only been 2 weeks. Longest 2 weeks of my life. She laughed, a soft, breathless sound that felt foreign in her own throat. Dominic tilted her chin up and kissed her forehead. Stay, he said quietly. I'm not going anywhere. I mean, in this bed. Tonight. Every night. Angela's chest tightened. Dominic, I know what the agreement was, he interrupted. Separate rooms, distance. But I can't do it anymore. Not after this. Angela searched his face. What are you saying? I'm saying this isn't temporary for me anymore. His voice was raw. If that scares you, tell me now. But don't lie to yourself about what this is. Angela's breath caught. She thought about the guest suite, still mostly packed. Thought about the gold ring on her finger that was supposed to mean nothing. Thought about Elias, who had orchestrated this entire arrangement, knowing exactly what he was doing. It scares me, she whispered. Dominic's jaw tightened. Then, but I'm not leaving. His eyes searched hers. Why not? Because being scared means I actually care about something, and I haven't cared about anything in years. Dominic kissed her again, slow and deep and full of promises neither of them could guarantee. They fell asleep tangled together, the city glowing outside the windows like a universe holding its breath. Angela woke first. Pale morning light filtered through the curtains. Dominic was still asleep beside her, one arm draped across her waist, his face softer in sleep than she'd ever seen it. She should feel guilty, should regret crossing a line they could never uncross. Instead, she felt lighter than she had in years. Angela carefully extracted herself from Dominic's grip and slipped out of bed. She pulled on his discarded shirt, it hung to her thighs, and padded barefoot to the kitchen. She made coffee, toast, scrambled eggs she wasn't sure Dominic would eat. She was halfway through her second cup when she heard footsteps. Dominic appeared in the doorway, wearing only boxer briefs, his hair rumpled from sleep. Angela's mouth went dry. "Morning," he said, his voice rough. "Morning," she gestured to the counter. "I made breakfast. I wasn't sure if you—" Dominic crossed the kitchen in 3 strides and kissed her. Angela made a soft sound of surprise, then melted into him, her coffee forgotten. When he finally pulled back, there was something almost shy in his expression. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For still being here." Angela's chest ached. "Where else would I be?" Dominic's thumb traced her lower lip. "Most people run when they see what I really am." "I'm not most people." "No," he agreed. "You're not." They ate breakfast together at the kitchen island, close enough that their knees touched. Dominic asked about the books Angela was reading. She asked about his business, carefully, testing where the boundaries were. He answered some questions, deflected others. It felt normal, almost domestic, like they were actually married instead of 2 people pretending. Then Dominic's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and his entire demeanor shifted, warmth draining away, replaced by cold calculation. "I have to take this," he said. "Okay." He stepped into the living room, his voice dropping to a murmur Angela couldn't make out. She cleaned up breakfast, trying not to eavesdrop, trying not to notice how Dominic's shoulders tensed with each passing second. When he returned, his expression was carved from ice. "I have to go," he said. "Now?" "Yes." He was already moving, pulling on clothes, grabbing his keys. "I'll be back tonight. Maybe later. Don't wait up." "Dominic." He stopped at the door, turning back to look at her. Angela stood in the kitchen wearing his shirt, her hair messy, her lips still swollen from his kisses. Something cracked in his expression. "Lock the door behind me," he said quietly. "Don't open it for anyone." "You're scaring me." "Good." He crossed back to her and kissed her hard. "That means you'll be careful." Then he was gone. Angela stood alone in the penthouse, her heart racing. She locked the door, checked the windows, tried to read, and couldn't focus. Hours passed. Afternoon bled into evening, evening into night. Dominic didn't call, didn't text. Angela paced the penthouse, her anxiety building with every passing minute. She thought about calling him, decided against it, thought about it again. At midnight, she finally gave up and went to bed. Not the guest suite. Dominic's bed, where the sheets still smelled like him. She didn't sleep. At 3 a.m., she heard the elevator. Angela was out of bed instantly, her pulse hammering. The penthouse door opened. Dominic stepped inside, and this time the damage was worse. His face was a mess, swollen eye, split cheekbone, blood dried in streaks along his jaw. His shirt was torn open, his knuckles were shredded. But it was his eyes that stopped Angela cold. Empty, flat, like he'd left something essential somewhere else and returned hollow. "Dominic, don't," he said quietly. Angela ignored him. She crossed the room and reached for his face. He caught her wrist, not hard, but firm. "I said don't." Let me help you. You can't. Dominic, I killed someone tonight. The words hit like a physical blow. Angela's breath stopped. Dominic's grip on her wrist loosened, but he didn't let go. He was moving against me, Dominic continued, his voice toneless. Trying to take territory I've held for 5 years. I gave him chances, warnings. He didn't listen. Angela's throat closed. So I made an example, Dominic said. The kind people remember. He finally released her wrist and walked to the window, putting distance between them. Angela's hands were shaking. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know what you're sleeping with. You think I don't already know? Dominic laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You know I'm dangerous. You don't know what that actually means. Then tell me. He turned to face her. It means I don't lose sleep over putting people in the ground. It means I'll burn this entire city if it keeps you safe. It means I've done things that would make you leave if you had any sense. Angela crossed her arms, trying to stop the trembling. And you're telling me this now why? To scare me off? To give you an out before this gets worse? What if I don't want an out? Angela, you think I'm naive, she interrupted. You think because I worked a hotel desk and lived small that I don't understand what you are. But I'm not stupid, Dominic. I knew what I was getting into the day Elias told me your name. Dominic's jaw clenched. Then you're more reckless than I thought. Maybe. Angela stepped toward him. Or maybe I just finally found something worth the risk. I'm not worth anything. That's not your choice to make. They stared at each other across the dark penthouse, the city glittering behind them like broken glass. I can't protect you from myself, Dominic said finally. Angela's voice was steady. I'm not asking you to. Then what are you asking? I'm asking you to stop pushing me away every time things get hard. Dominic's hands flexed at his sides. You don't understand. Let me. Chiying. Then help me understand. Angela closed the distance between them. You said you see me. Let me see you. For a long moment, Dominic just looked at her. This woman who should have run the first night she cleaned blood off his face, who should have packed her bags the second she understood what he really was. Instead, she stood in front of him wearing his shirt, her chin lifted, refusing to flinch. I grew up in Southie, Dominic said quietly. My father drank himself to death before I turned 10. My mother worked 3 jobs and still couldn't keep the lights on. I was 14 the first time I broke someone's nose for money. 16 when I realized I was good at violence. 18 when Elias Mercer found me half dead in an alley and decided I was worth saving. Angela listened without interrupting. He gave me structure, Dominic continued, introduced me to people, taught me how to turn violence into power. By the time I was 25, I owned more territory than men twice my age. By 30, I was untouchable. And now? Angela asked softly. Dominic's expression darkened. Now I'm fighting to keep what's mine while everyone in this city tries to take it. Why not walk away? Because the second I show weakness, everything collapses, and everyone who depends on me ends up dead. Angela reached for his hand carefully. His knuckles were still bleeding, the skin torn and raw. Let me clean this, she whispered. Dominic didn't pull away. They moved to the bathroom together. Angela made Dominic sit on the edge of the tub while she gathered supplies. Antiseptic, gauze, medical tape. She worked in silence, cleaning each knuckle with careful precision. Dominic watched her the entire time, his breathing slow and measured. You should be terrified of me, he said quietly. Angela met his eyes. I am. Then why are you still here? Because terror and love aren't mutually exclusive. Dominic's breath caught. Angela finished bandaging his hands and set the supplies aside. I love you, she said simply. I don't know when it happened. Maybe the first night you came home bleeding. Maybe when you defended me to Savannah. Maybe it's been building since the courthouse. But it's there, and I'm not running from it. Dominic stood slowly, his bandaged hands coming up to cup her face. I've never loved anyone, he said hoarsely. I don't know how. Then we'll figure it out together. He kissed her, desperate and raw and full of something that felt like surrender. They made it back to bed. This time it was slower, more careful, like they were both terrified of breaking something fragile. Afterward, Dominic held her close, his fingers tracing patterns along her shoulder. "This won't be easy," he murmured against her hair. "I know. People will try to hurt you to get to me." "Let them try." Dominic pulled back enough to look at her. "Angela, I'm not fragile," she said firmly. "Stop treating me like I'll shatter. You're the most important thing in my life. That makes you a target. Then teach me how to protect myself." Dominic's eyes widened slightly. "What?" "You heard me." Angela sat up, the sheet pooling around her waist. "If being with you makes me a target, then teach me how to fight back. Don't just lock me in this penthouse and hope no one finds me." Dominic stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he smiled. A real smile, the kind that transformed his entire face. "Elias knew exactly what he was doing when he sent you to me," Dominic said. "What do you mean?" "He knew I needed someone who wouldn't break." Dominic tucked hair behind her ear. "Someone who would push back instead of running." Angela leaned into his touch. "So you'll teach me?" "On one condition." "What?" "You promise me that if I tell you to run, you run. No questions, no hesitation." Angela considered this. "Okay." "You mean that?" "If it keeps you from shutting me out again, yes." Dominic kissed her forehead. "Deal." They fell asleep tangled together, and for the first time since their wedding, Angela felt like they were actually building something real. She should have known better. Nothing good lasts in Dominic Vane's world. The next morning, Angela woke to shouting. She sat up fast, disoriented. Dominic was already out of bed, pulling on pants, his expression sharp with alarm. "Stay here," he ordered. "What's happening?" "I said stay here." He was gone before she could argue. Angela grabbed his shirt from the floor and pulled it on, her heart racing. She could hear voices now, multiple people, all talking over each other. Then Dominic's voice, cutting through like a blade. "Get out! We need to talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. Get out!" A woman's voice, cold and furious. "You don't get to shut me out of this decision." Angela's stomach dropped. She knew that voice. Not personally, but she'd heard it before. On the phone, during one of Dominic's late-night calls. The voice belonged to someone who had clearly been in Dominic's life long before Angela arrived. Angela crossed to the bedroom door and cracked it open. The living room was full of people. 3 men in expensive suits, and 1 woman. She was tall, blonde, dressed in tailored black like she'd walked out of a corporate boardroom. Beautiful in a way that was sharp and deliberate. And she was staring at Dominic with the kind of fury that came from intimacy. "You can't make this call alone," the woman said. "Watch me," Dominic replied coldly. "This affects all of us. It affects me, my territory, my decision." The woman's eyes narrowed. "Since when do you make unilateral decisions without consulting?" "Since I stopped owing you explanations, Claire." The name hit Angela like a fist. Claire. Dominic had mentioned her once, casually, months ago before they were even married. A business partner. Someone who handled the financial side of his empire. But the way Claire was looking at him now suggested their partnership had been more than business. Claire's gaze suddenly shifted. She saw Angela standing in the bedroom doorway, wearing Dominic's shirt, her hair messy, barefoot. Something dark flickered across Claire's face. "You've got to be kidding me," she said slowly. Dominic turned. His expression hardened when he saw Angela. "I told you to stay in the bedroom." "I heard shouting." "It's handled." Claire laughed, sharp and humorless. "Is this what Elias's little charity project has become? A distraction?" Angela's cheeks flushed. Dominic's voice dropped to something lethal. "Careful." "Or what?" Claire stepped toward him. "You'll choose her over 5 years of partnership? Over everything we've built?" "Yes." The word hung in the air like a gunshot. Claire's expression twisted. "You're making a mistake. That's my problem." "No," Claire said coldly. "It's all our problem. Because the second your enemies realize you're compromised, they'll come for her. And when they do, this entire operation collapses." Dominic moved so fast Angela barely saw it. Suddenly, he was in Claire's space, his voice low and dangerous. "If anyone touches her," he said quietly, "I will burn this city to ash. Are we clear?" Claire held his gaze. "Perfectly." Then she turned and walked out, the 3 men following behind her. The elevator doors closed. Silence fell. Dominic stood in the middle of the living room, his hands clenched into fists, his breathing harsh. Angela approached carefully. Dominic, not now. Who was she? I said not now, Angela. I deserve to know. Dominic spun to face her. She's someone who used to share my bed before I married you. Is that what you wanted to hear? Angela's stomach twisted. Dominic's expression cracked. Fuck, Angela, I'm sorry. That came out. How long ago? Her voice was steady despite the trembling in her hands. 3 years. It ended 3 years ago. But she's still in your life. She's a business partner, nothing more. She doesn't act like nothing. Dominic dragged a hand through his hair. What she wants doesn't matter. What matters is that you're safe. I'm not the one in danger here. Angela stepped closer. You are. Because Claire's right. Your enemies are going to see me as a weakness. Let them. Dominic, I don't care what they think. His voice was raw. I don't care if loving you makes me vulnerable. I don't care if it costs me everything. Angela's breath caught. You just said you loved me. Dominic blinked, like he hadn't realized what he'd admitted. Then his expression softened. Yeah, he said quietly. I did. Angela crossed the remaining distance and kissed him, hard and desperate and full of something that felt like falling. When they broke apart, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. This is going to get worse before it gets better, he murmured. I know. People are going to come after you. I know. And I'm going to do terrible things to protect you. Angela's hands fisted in his shirt. I know. Dominic pulled back enough to meet her eyes. And you're still not leaving? Not unless you make me. He kissed her again, slower this time, like a promise. But as Angela melted into him, she couldn't shake the cold knot of dread settling in her stomach, because Claire's words echoed in her mind. The second your enemies realize you're compromised, they'll come for her. And Angela had a terrible feeling that moment was coming faster than either of them were ready for. The first threat arrived 3 days later. Angela found it slipped under the penthouse door while Dominic was in the shower. A plain white envelope with no return address, no postage, nothing to indicate how it had bypassed building security. Inside was a single photograph. Angela stared at it, her blood turning to ice. It was her, walking out of a coffee shop 2 blocks from the penthouse. The photo had been taken yesterday. She recognized the coat she was wearing, the book tucked under her arm. Someone had been following her, and they wanted her to know. Angela's hands shook as she turned the photo over. 4 words, written in block letters. She's easier than you. The bathroom door opened. Dominic stepped out, towel slung low around his hips, water still dripping from his hair. He saw her face and stopped cold. What happened? Angela handed him the envelope without a word. Dominic's expression went from concern to something murderous in the span of a heartbeat. He stared at the photo, his jaw clenching so hard, Angela heard his teeth grind. When did this arrive? Just now. It was under the door. Dominic was already moving, pulling on clothes with sharp, violent efficiency. He grabbed his phone and dialed. I need building security footage from the last hour. Every floor, every camera. A pause. I don't care if it's your day off. Get it done in 10 minutes or find a new job. He hung up and turned to Angela. Pack a bag. What? You're leaving. Today. I have a safe house in... No. Dominic's eyes flashed. This isn't a negotiation. You're right, Angela said, her voice steadier than she felt. It's not, because I'm not leaving. Angela, we talked about this. You don't get to shut me out every time things get dangerous. This isn't dangerous. It's a direct threat. Dominic crossed to her, gripping her shoulders. Someone followed you, photographed you, got close enough to slip this under my door. Do you understand what that means? It means they're trying to scare me. It's working on me. Angela met his gaze. Then we deal with it. Together, like you promised. Dominic's hands tightened on her shoulders. For a moment, Angela thought he might physically carry her out of the penthouse himself. Then his phone rang. He answered it with a snarl. What? Angela watched his face change as he listened, fury giving way to something colder, more calculated. Send it to my phone, check. he said finally, then hung up. 30 seconds later, his phone chimed. Dominic pulled up the video and went perfectly still. "What is it?" Angela asked. He turned the screen toward her. The security footage showed the penthouse elevator. A man in a maintenance uniform stepped out, walked directly to Dominic's door, slid the envelope underneath, and returned to the elevator. But it was his face that made Angela's stomach drop. She recognized him. Not from the penthouse, from the hotel. He'd been a guest 3 months ago, polite, forgettable, the kind of customer who checked in quietly and left without causing trouble. "Do you know him?" Dominic's voice was deadly quiet. "He stayed at the Harbor View," Angela whispered. "Room 412. He was there for a week in July." Dominic's expression turned to stone. "What name did he use?" I don't remember. It was months ago." "Think." Angela closed her eyes, trying to pull the memory forward. Marcus something. He paid cash." Dominic's entire body went rigid. "Marcus Kell." Angela opened her eyes. "You know him?" "He's the one I've been fighting for territory." Dominic's voice was flat, emotionless, the kind of calm that preceded violence. "He's been moving product through the waterfront for 6 months. I warned him, multiple times. 3 days ago, I made an example of one of his distributors." The pieces clicked into place. "He was watching me," Angela said slowly, "even before we got married. He was watching me. You were just collateral he knew he could use eventually." Dominic pocketed his phone. "This ends today." "What are you going to do?" "What I should have done 6 months ago." Angela grabbed his arm. "Dominic, I'm going to kill him." The words were matter of fact, no heat, no rage, just cold certainty. Angela's chest tightened. "You can't just—" "Yes, I can." Dominic pulled free of her grip. "And I will, because if I don't, he'll keep coming, and next time it won't be a photograph." "Then let me come with you." "Absolutely not. You said you'd teach me to protect myself." "I said I'd teach you. I didn't say I'd bring you into a war zone." Dominic cupped her face, his expression softening slightly. "I need you here. Safe. Please." Angela wanted to argue, wanted to fight him on this, but the fear in his eyes, real, raw fear, stopped her. "Okay," she whispered. Dominic kissed her hard. "Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone. I'll be back before midnight." "Promise?" "I promise." He left. Angela locked the door behind him, her hands still trembling. Then she paced. Hours crawled by. She tried to read, couldn't focus, tried to cook, burned everything, tried to sleep and gave up after 20 minutes of staring at the ceiling. At 10 p.m., her phone rang. Unknown number. Angela almost didn't answer. Then something made her pick up. "Hello? Angela Vale?" A woman's voice. Familiar, but wrong somehow, strained, panicked. "Who is this?" "It's Claire." Angela went still. "How did you get this number?" "That doesn't matter. Listen to me very carefully. Dominic is walking into a trap." Angela's blood turned to ice. "What?" Marcus Kell knew Dominic would come for him tonight. He's been planning this for weeks. There are 15 men waiting at the warehouse. Dominic has 3. "Why are you telling me this?" Claire's voice cracked. "Because as much as I hate what you've done to him, I don't want him dead. And if you care about him at all, you'll call him right now and tell him to turn around." The line went dead. Angela's hands were shaking so hard she nearly dropped the phone. She dialed Dominic. It rang twice, then went to voicemail. No. She tried again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Angela grabbed her coat, her keys, her phone. She didn't think, didn't plan. She just ran. The warehouse was on the waterfront, tucked between shipping containers and abandoned industrial buildings. Angela's Uber driver gave her a look when she told him the address. "You sure, lady? That area's not safe." "I'm sure." He dropped her off 3 blocks away and peeled out before she even closed the door. Angela ran. Her breath came in short gasps. Her shoes weren't made for running. She didn't care. She could see the warehouse now, a hulking concrete structure lit by flickering streetlights, and she could hear gunfire, sharp cracks echoing off metal and stone. Angela's heart stopped. She sprinted toward the sound, every rational thought screaming at her to turn around. The warehouse entrance was open. Inside, the space was cavernous, stacked crates, rusted machinery, shadows thick enough to hide an army. More gunshots, shouting, then silence. Angela pressed herself against a concrete pillar, trying to control her breathing. "Told you this would be easy." A man's voice, rough and unfamiliar. "Veins getting sloppy." "Where is he?" Another voice, younger. "Bleeding out behind the shipping container. Won't last long." Angela's vision blurred. She forced herself to move, creeping deeper into the warehouse, using the crates for cover. She found him slumped against a rusted container, one hand pressed against his side where blood was spreading fast across his shirt. Two of his men were down, motionless. Dominic's face was pale, his breathing shallow. Angela ran to him, dropping to her knees beside him. "Dominic." His eyes snapped open, unfocused. "Angela? I'm here. I'm here." Her hands shook as she pressed them over his, trying to slow the bleeding. "We need to get you out of here." "How?" He coughed, and blood flecked his lips. "How did you—" "Claire called me." Dominic's expression sharpened despite the pain. "Claire. She said it was a trap. Angela's voice broke. "You're bleeding so much. We need an ambulance." "No." Dominic gripped her wrist weakly. "Can't involve authorities. Call Vincent. Number's in my phone." Angela fumbled for his phone with trembling hands. Footsteps echoed across the warehouse. "Well, this is touching." Angela's blood froze. She turned slowly. Marcus Kell stood 10 feet away, flanked by 3 armed men. He was shorter than she expected, stocky, with graying hair and dead eyes. He smiled when he saw her. Angela Vale, the mystery woman who turned Boston's most dangerous man into a sentimental fool. He tilted his head. "I have to say, I'm disappointed. I expected someone more impressive." "Fuck you," Angela spat. Marcus laughed. "There's some fire. Dominic, you've been holding out on us." Dominic tried to stand and collapsed back against the container, his face gray with pain. Marcus took a step closer. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to watch me put a bullet in your wife's head. Then you're going to bleed out knowing the last thing you saw was her brains on this concrete floor." Angela's entire body went cold. One of Marcus's men raised his gun, and then the world exploded. Gunfire erupted from somewhere above. The catwalks. Marcus's men went down fast, blood spraying across rusted metal. Marcus dove for cover, cursing. Angela threw herself over Dominic, shielding him with her body. More gunfire, shouting, the sharp smell of cordite and blood. Then silence. Footsteps on metal stairs. Angela looked up. Claire descended from the catwalk, a pistol in her hand, 5 armed men following behind her. She walked past Marcus's body, 2 bullets in the chest, eyes still open in shock, and stopped in front of Angela and Dominic. "You're late," Dominic rasped. Claire's expression was ice. "You're welcome." She nodded to her men. 2 of them moved forward, carefully lifting Dominic. "We have a doctor waiting," Claire said. "You'll live, probably." Dominic's eyes found Angela. "You shouldn't have come." "I had to." "You could have been killed." "So could you." Claire made a disgusted sound. "Save the romance for later. We need to move before cops show up." They carried Dominic out to a black SUV waiting in the alley. Angela climbed in beside him, her hands still covered in his blood. Claire got in the front passenger seat. "Drive," she ordered. The SUV pulled away from the warehouse, tires screeching. Angela held Dominic's hand the entire way, her fingers laced through his, feeling his pulse flutter weakly against her wrist. "Stay with me," she whispered. Dominic's eyes were half closed. Always. The doctor's office was in Chinatown. Unmarked door, no sign, the kind of place that asked no questions and kept no records. They carried Dominic inside. The doctor took one look at the wound and started barking orders in Mandarin. Angela tried to follow them into the operating room. Claire grabbed her arm. "You'll just be in the way." "I'm not leaving him." "He's getting a bullet removed, not dying." Claire's grip tightened. "You and I need to talk." She pulled Angela into a small waiting room and closed the door. They stood on opposite sides of the cramped space, tension thick enough to choke on. "You saved his life," Angela said finally. "I saved my investment." Claire's voice was cold. Dominic controls half the waterfront. If he dies, everything collapses. I'm not letting that happen because he got stupid over some woman. Angela's hands clenched. I'm not some woman, Seth. No, you're the weak point everyone's going to exploit now. Step closer. Marcus Kell isn't the last. There will be others. And they'll all see exactly what Marcus saw. That Dominic Vane's greatest weakness walks around in second-hand coats and thinks love conquers all. You don't know anything about us. I know he was untouchable before you. Claire's eyes were hard. I know he made decisions with his head instead of his heart. I know he would have ended Marcus 6 months ago if you hadn't been a distraction. Angela's throat tightened. That's not fair. Fair doesn't matter. Survival does. Claire's expression shifted, something almost like pity flickering across her features. You think loving him makes you stronger. It doesn't. It makes you both targets. Then why did you save us tonight? Claire was silent for a long moment. Because I loved him once too, she said finally. And I know what it costs. The words hung between them like broken glass. Before Angela could respond, the operating room door opened. The doctor stepped out, pulling off bloody gloves. He'll live, he said in accented English. Bullet missed the liver. Lots of blood loss, but he's stable. He needs rest. Angela sagged with relief. Claire nodded once. Can he be moved? In a few hours. Not before. We'll wait. The doctor disappeared back into the operating room. Claire turned to Angela. I meant what I said. You're a liability. I don't care. You should. Claire's voice dropped. Because Dominic will burn his entire empire to keep you safe, and when he does, everyone who depends on him will suffer. What do you want me to do? Leave. Claire said it simply, like she was suggesting a different restaurant. Disappear. Give him back his focus before someone else exploits what Marcus saw. Angela's chest tightened. I'm not leaving him. Then you'll get him killed. You don't know that. I know this world better than you ever will. Claire's expression hardened. And I know that love is the fastest way to die in it. She walked out, leaving Angela alone in the waiting room. Angela sank into a plastic chair, her mind spinning. Was Claire right? Was loving Dominic the thing that would destroy him? She thought about the photograph slipped under the door, the trap Marcus had set, the way Dominic had almost died tonight because he was too focused on protecting her to see the danger coming. Maybe she was a weakness. Maybe she should leave. But then she remembered the way Dominic looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. The way he held her like she was something precious instead of broken. The way he'd said, I love you, like the words were being torn out of him. Angela pressed her hands to her face. She didn't know what the right answer was. All she knew was that she couldn't imagine a world without him anymore, even if staying meant watching him bleed. 4 hours later, they transferred Dominic to a safe house in Cambridge, a brownstone that looked like every other house on the tree-lined street. Angela helped him inside, her arm around his waist, taking as much of his weight as she could. He was pale, moving carefully, but alive. They made it to the bedroom. Dominic collapsed onto the bed with a pained grunt. Angela sat beside him, her hand finding his. You scared me, she whispered. I'm sorry. Don't do it again. Dominic's mouth quirked despite the pain. I'll try. Angela's throat tightened. Claire thinks I should leave you. Dominic's eyes snapped open. What? She said I'm making you weak, that you'd be safer without me. Claire's wrong. Is she? Angela's voice cracked. You almost died tonight, Dominic, because you were too busy worrying about me to see the trap. Dominic pulled her closer, ignoring the pain it caused. I've been walking into traps my entire life. Long before you. This isn't on you. Then whose fault is it? Mine. His voice was rough. For not ending Marcus sooner. For letting my guard down. For thinking I could have both you and this life without consequences. Angela's eyes burned. Maybe you can't. Maybe. Dominic's hand came up to cup her face. But I'm not willing to give you up to find out. Even if it kills you? Even then. Angela kissed him, desperate and trembling and full of fear. When they broke apart, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. We'll figure this out, he murmured. Together. Angela wanted to believe him, but as she lay beside him in the unfamiliar safe house, listening to his breathing even out into sleep, She couldn't shake the cold certainty settling in her bones. Claire was right about one thing. Love in Dominic's world wasn't strength. It was a loaded gun pressed against both their heads. And sooner or later, someone was going to pull the trigger. The next morning, Angela woke to find Dominic already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed with his phone pressed to his ear. "Don't care what it costs. I want names. Everyone Marcus worked with. Everyone who knew about the warehouse." A pause. "No. No mercy. Not this time." He hung up and noticed Angela watching. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like I got shot." He attempted a smile. "But alive. Thanks to you." Angela sat up. "I didn't do anything. Claire saved us." "You called her, warned me." Dominic reached for her hand. "If you hadn't, Don't." Angela pulled away. "Don't make me the hero. I'm the reason you were there in the first place." "Angela, he sent that photograph because of me. Set the trap because of me. You almost died because I make you vulnerable." Dominic's jaw clenched. "Claire got to you. She told me the truth. She told you what she needed to believe to justify walking away from me 3 years ago." Dominic stood carefully, wincing. Claire loved control more than she loved me. When she realized she couldn't have both, she chose control. Don't let her poison what we have. What if she's right? She's not. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Dominic crossed to her, gripping her shoulders. Because I've been in this world for 15 years. I've survived prison, gang wars, federal investigations, assassination attempts. You know what almost broke me? Not violence. Not betrayal. Loneliness. Angela's breath caught. "I was dying slowly before you," Dominic continued, his voice raw, "turning into something empty. You didn't make me weak, you made me human again." Tears burned Angela's eyes. "I don't want to be the reason you die." "You won't be." He pulled her close. "We're going to survive this. Both of us." Angela wanted to believe him, but before she could respond, the safe house door exploded inward. Wood splintered, glass shattered. Men in tactical gear poured through the entrance. Dominic shoved Angela behind him, reaching for the gun on the nightstand. He didn't make it. Someone hit him from behind, a rifle butt to his wounded side. Dominic went down hard, gasping in pain. Angela screamed. Rough hands grabbed her, dragged her backward. She fought, kicking, clawing, but there were too many of them. A black hood came down over her head. The world went dark. She heard Dominic roaring her name, heard the wet sound of fists hitting flesh. Then nothing. When they pulled the hood off, Angela was zip-tied to a chair in a concrete room with no windows. A single light bulb swung overhead, and across from her sat a woman she'd never seen before. Older, 50s maybe, expensively dressed, cold eyes that missed nothing. "Angela Vale," the woman said pleasantly. "We finally meet." Angela's heart hammered. "Who are you?" "My name is Elena Volkov." The woman smiled. "And you're going to help me destroy Dominic Vane." Angela's blood turned to ice. Elena leaned forward. "Or I'm going to kill everyone you've ever loved and make you watch." Angela stared at Elena Volkov and felt something cold settle into her bones. Not fear. Something sharper. Rage. "I don't know what you think I can do for you," Angela said, her voice steadier than she felt. "But you're wasting your time." Elena smiled. "Am I?" "Dominic won't negotiate. Not for me. Not for anyone." "You're right." Elena stood, circling Angela's chair slowly. "He won't negotiate, but he will burn this entire city to find you. And when he does, he'll be reckless, exposed, vulnerable." Angela's jaw clenched. "So this is a trap. This is strategy." Elena stopped in front of her. "Marcus Kell thought he could use you as leverage. He was an idiot. Leverage requires the threat of harm. I'm offering you something better." "What?" Elena leaned down, her face inches from Angela's. "Freedom. A new life. Enough money to disappear anywhere in the world. All you have to do is walk away." Angela's stomach twisted. "You want me to leave him?" "I want you to save yourself before Dominic's empire collapses and buries you with it." Elena straightened. "He's made too many enemies, lost too much ground. The waterfront is slipping. His partners are questioning his judgment, and it's all because of you. That's not true, isn't it? Elena's voice was almost kind. How many times has he chosen protecting you over protecting his territory? How many deals has he walked away from because they posed a risk to your safety? How many men has he alienated because they saw what you really are? What am I? A distraction. Elena said it simply. A weakness wearing a wedding ring. Angela's hands clenched against the zip ties. If you're going to kill me, just do it. I'm not playing this game. Elena laughed, a sound like breaking glass. I'm not going to kill you, Angela. That would make you a martyr. Dominic would tear this city apart brick by brick until he found whoever was responsible. No, I'm going to give you a choice. What choice? Elena pulled a phone from her pocket and held it up. The screen showed live security footage. Dominic, in what looked like an abandoned factory, surrounded by at least a dozen armed men. His hands were zip-tied behind his back. Blood ran down the side of his face from a gash above his eye. But his expression was pure murder. Angela's heart stopped. What did you do to him? Nothing yet. Elena's thumb hovered over the screen. But if you refuse my offer, I will have him executed in the next 60 seconds. Angela couldn't breathe. You're lying. Elena tapped the screen. One of the armed men stepped forward and pressed a gun to the back of Dominic's head. Wait! Angela's voice cracked. Wait, please! Elena held up a hand. The man with the gun stepped back. There's the Angela I was expecting, Elena murmured. The one who loves him more than her own survival. Angela's eyes burned. What do you want from me? I told you. Walk away. Sign divorce papers. Disappear. And I'll let him live. He'll come after me. Not if you make him believe you left willingly. Elena set the phone on a small table where Angela could see it. I'll release you in Boston. You'll go to the penthouse, pack your things, and leave a note telling Dominic that you can't do this anymore. That the violence, the danger, the constant fear, it's too much. You'll take the money from your agreement and start over somewhere new. Angela's throat tightened. He'll never believe I left without saying goodbye. He'll believe what he needs to believe. Men like Dominic understand being abandoned. It's happened to them their entire lives. Elena's voice was almost gentle. You'll be saving his life and his empire. He'll hate you for it at first, but eventually he'll move on, and you'll both survive. Angela looked at the screen. Dominic was saying something to his captors. She couldn't hear the words, but she could see the fury in his face, the way his body was coiled tight despite the zip ties. He was planning something, a way to fight back. Even now, bleeding and surrounded, he wasn't giving up. And Angela realized with sudden, devastating clarity that Elena was right about one thing. Dominic would never stop fighting for her, even if it killed him. How do I know you'll keep your word? Angela whispered. Elena smiled. You don't, but what choice do you have? Angela closed her eyes. She thought about the night Dominic had cleaned blood from his knuckles and told her she deserved better. The way he'd looked at her in the courthouse like she was something precious. The first time they'd made love, and he'd whispered her name like a prayer. She thought about Claire's warning that love in this world was a loaded gun. And she thought about Elias dying in that hospital room, asking Dominic to protect her, not control her, not own her, protect her, even from himself. Angela opened her eyes. Okay, she said quietly. I'll do it. Elena's expression shifted, surprise flickering across her features before smoothing into satisfaction. Smart girl. But I have conditions. You're not in a position to negotiate. You want me to sell this convincingly, right? To make Dominic believe I'm leaving willingly? Angela's voice hardened. Then you'll give me what I need to make that happen. Elena studied her for a long moment. What do you want? I want to see him, one last time, alone, 5 minutes. Absolutely not. Then kill him now. Angela's voice was ice. Because I'll tell him the truth the second I see him, and your whole plan falls apart. Elena's jaw tightened. You're bluffing. Try me. They stared at each other across the concrete room. Finally, Elena pulled out her phone and made a call. Bring Vane to holding room 3. Alone. 5 minutes. She hung up and looked at Angela with something almost like respect. You're stronger than I thought, Elena said. You have no idea. 20 minutes later, they They cut Angela's zip ties and shoved her into a different room. Smaller, no windows. A single metal table bolted to the floor. Dominic was already there. They'd tied him to a chair, his hands bound behind him, his face a mess of cuts and bruises. But the second he saw Angela, his entire body went rigid. "Angela," she crossed the room in 3 strides and kissed him hard. Dominic made a sound against her mouth, relief and desperation and rage all tangled together. When Angela pulled back, his eyes were searching her face frantically. "Are you hurt?" "No." "Did they touch you?" "No, Dominic. I'm going to kill every single person in this building." His voice was low and lethal. "Starting with whoever gave the order to take you." Angela cupped his face carefully, avoiding the worst of the bruises. "Listen to me. We don't have much time." "What did they want?" Angela's throat tightened. She had practiced this in her head during the drive over, had gone over every word, every inflection, trying to figure out how to lie to the one person who could always see through her. But standing here, looking into his pale gray eyes, she realized she couldn't do it. She couldn't sell him the fiction Elena wanted. So she'd give him the truth and pray he was smart enough to play along. "They want me to leave you," Angela said quietly. "Elena Volkov offered me money, a new identity, protection, everything I'd need to disappear. In exchange, I walk away and let you get back to running your empire without distractions." Dominic's expression turned murderous. "And you said," "I said yes." The words landed like a physical blow. Dominic went completely still. "What?" Angela's hands were shaking, but she kept them pressed to his face, forcing him to look at her. "I'm going to walk out of here. Go back to the penthouse. Pack my things. Leave you a note saying I can't do this anymore. And then I'm going to disappear." Dominic's breathing was ragged. "Angela, and you're going to let me," she continued, her voice breaking. "You're going to read that note and believe every word. You're going to let me go without coming after me. Do you understand?" "No!" Dominic tried to pull away from her hands, but the restraints held him in place. "Fuck no. Whatever they threatened you with, they'll kill you." Angela's voice cracked. "The second I refuse, they put a bullet in your head. I watched them put a gun to your skull, Dominic. I'm not calling that bluff." "So you're just giving up?" "I'm saving your life." "By breaking my fucking heart?" Dominic's voice was raw. "You think I want to survive if it means losing you?" Angela's eyes burned. "You don't get to make that choice. Not this time." "The hell I don't." "Dominic." Angela leaned her forehead against his. "Please, I need you to trust me." Something shifted in his expression. "What are you planning?" "I'm planning to do exactly what they want." Angela's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Until I figure out a way to destroy them." Dominic's eyes widened slightly. Understanding flickered across his face. "How long?" he whispered back. "I don't know. Days, maybe weeks, but I'll come back." "Angela, you have to let me do this." Her voice was urgent now. "They're watching. If you fight this, if you come after me immediately, they'll know it's a setup. But if you let me walk away, if you make them believe you're broken, we buy time." "Time for what?" "Time for me to figure out where Elena keeps her records, her contacts, everything we'd need to dismantle her operation from the inside." Angela's hands tightened on his face. "I was invisible my whole life, Dominic. No one ever looked at me. That's my advantage now." Dominic's jaw clenched. "This is insane. It's the only play we have. If something happens to you, then you burn the world like you promised." Angela kissed him again, soft and desperate. "But until then, you let me go." The door opened. 2 armed men stepped inside. "Time's up." Angela pulled back slowly, memorizing every detail of Dominic's face. "I love you," she whispered. Dominic's voice was hoarse. "Don't do this. I have to." She turned and walked toward the door. "Angela?" She stopped but didn't turn around. "When you come back," Dominic said quietly, "we're burning every single person who touched you. No mercy. No exceptions." Angela's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I'm counting on it." Then she left. They drove her back to the penthouse in a black SUV with tinted windows. Elena sat beside her in silence. When they pulled up to the building, Elena handed her a burner phone. "You have 2 hours to pack and leave. If you're not gone by then, Dominic dies." If you contact anyone, police, FBI, any of his associates, Dominic dies. If you try to run without leaving the note to Dominic dies. I understand. Angela took the phone. How do I know you'll let him go once I'm gone? You don't. Elena's expression was unreadable. But I keep my word, always. It's the only reason I've survived this long. Angela nodded once and got out of the SUV. She rode the elevator to the penthouse, her heart hammering. The space felt empty without Dominic. Cold. Angela moved through the rooms mechanically, packing her clothes, her books, the photograph of Elias. Everything fit into 2 suitcases, just like before. She sat at the kitchen island and pulled out a piece of paper. Her hand shook as she wrote, Dominic, I can't do this anymore. The violence, the danger, the constant fear that every time you leave, you won't come back. It's too much. I thought I could be strong enough. I thought loving you would be enough. But I was wrong. You were right about one thing. I'm not built for your world, and staying will only get one or both of us killed. I'm taking the money from our agreement and starting over somewhere new. Please don't look for me. Let me go. It's better this way. I'm sorry. Angela. She read it twice, hating every word. Then she left it on the counter where Dominic would find it. Angela took one last look at the penthouse, the harbor views, the kitchen where they'd shared coffee, the bedroom where they'd fallen in love despite every reason not to. Then she picked up her suitcases and walked out. The SUV was waiting. Elena said nothing as Angela climbed inside. They drove in silence to a private airfield outside the city. A small jet was waiting, engines already running. Where am I going? Angela asked. Miami. You'll have a hotel room reserved under a new name. Cash will be delivered tomorrow. After that, you're on your own. Elena handed her an envelope. Passport, credit cards, birth certificate. You're Emma Harris now, 28 years old, originally from Seattle, moved to Miami for work. Angela took the envelope with numb fingers. One more thing, Elena said. If you ever try to contact Dominic Vane again, I'll know. And I will kill you both. Are we clear? Angela met her eyes. Perfectly. She boarded the plane without looking back. The jet took off into gray skies, Boston disappearing beneath the clouds. Angela sat in the leather seat, staring at the fake passport in her hands. Emma Harris. A stranger's name for a stranger's life. She thought about Dominic reading her note right now. The look on his face. The way his hands would shake as he crumpled the paper. She thought about him believing, even for a second, that she had abandoned him. Angela's chest tightened until she couldn't breathe. But she didn't cry. She couldn't afford to. Because Elena Volkov had made one critical mistake. She'd assumed Angela Vale was still the invisible woman who apologized for existing. The woman who disappeared into corners and accepted whatever scraps the world offered. But Angela wasn't that woman anymore. Dominic had taught her to take up space, to fight back, to be dangerous when necessary. And now Elena was going to learn exactly how dangerous an invisible woman could be. The plane landed in Miami 4 hours later. A driver was waiting to take her to the hotel, a mid-range chain near the beach, the kind of place that catered to tourists and asked no questions. Angela checked in under her new name and rode the elevator to the 8th floor. The room was generic. Beige walls, floral bedspread, a view of the parking lot. Angela set her suitcases down and sat on the edge of the bed. Then finally, she let herself feel it. The fear, the rage, the crushing weight of being separated from the only person who had ever made her feel whole. She pulled out her phone, her real phone, the one Elena thought she'd thrown away. She'd hidden it in the lining of her suitcase. Angela turned it on, her hands shaking. 37 missed calls from Dominic, 23 voicemails, dozens of texts. She opened the most recent one. I know you're playing her. I know you're coming back. But if you're reading this and you meant what you wrote, if you really want out, I'll let you go. I love you enough to give you that. But please, Angela, please tell me this is part of the plan. Angela's vision blurred. She typed quickly. It's part of the plan. Give me 2 weeks. Then come find me. She sent it. Then turned off the phone before he could respond. Because if she read whatever he wrote back, she'd break. And she couldn't afford to break. Not yet. Angela stood and walked to the window. Miami sprawled beneath her, bright and loud and nothing like Boston. Somewhere in this city, Elena Volkov had connections, resources, people who owed her favors, and Angela was going to find every single one of them. She'd play the role of Emma Harris, quiet, forgettable, exactly the kind of woman no one looked at twice. She'd get a job, make friends, blend in. And while she did, she'd listen, watch, learn, find the cracks in Elena's operation. Because Angela had learned one essential truth in the months since marrying Dominic Vane. Invisible didn't mean powerless. Sometimes it meant predator instead of prey. And when Dominic finally came for her, and he would come, she had no doubt, Angela would hand him everything he needed to dismantle Elena's empire piece by piece. Then they'd burn it all to the ground together. Angela pulled the curtains closed and started unpacking. She had work to do. 2 weeks later, Angela had a job at a beachfront restaurant, a studio apartment in Little Havana, and 3 new friends who thought Emma Harris was a sweet, slightly shy woman recovering from a bad breakup. None of them knew she spent her nights tracking financial transactions through shell companies, mapping out Elena's network one connection at a time. None of them knew she'd planted listening devices in 2 luxury hotels Elena used for business meetings. None of them knew she was building a case that would bring down one of the East Coast's most dangerous criminal networks. Angela had become invisible again. But this time, it was a weapon. On the 14th night, she came home from her shift at the restaurant to find her apartment door unlocked. Her heart stopped. She pushed the door open slowly, her hand reaching for the knife she kept in her purse. The lights were off, but she could see a figure sitting in the chair by the window, waiting. Angela's breath caught. "You're early," she whispered. Dominic stood slowly, moving into the thin light from the street. He looked thinner, harder, like he'd spent 2 weeks carving himself into something even more dangerous than before. "I couldn't wait any longer," he said, hoarsely. Angela dropped her purse and crossed the room in 3 strides. They collided like planets crashing, desperate, violent, all teeth and hands, and 2 weeks of separation burning away in seconds. Dominic lifted her, and Angela wrapped her legs around his waist, kissing him like she could crawl inside his skin and live there. They made it to the bed. Barely. Clothes tore, fingers bruised, neither of them cared. Afterward, they lay tangled together, breathing hard, the Miami heat pressing down on them like a living thing. "I have everything," Angela whispered against his chest. "Bank accounts, shell companies, every person Elena's worked with in the last 5 years. Everything we need." Dominic's arm tightened around her. "How?" "I made myself invisible, just like before, except this time I used it." Dominic pulled back enough to look at her face. "You're incredible." Angela's throat tightened. "I missed you so much I thought I'd die from it." "Never again," Dominic's voice was fierce. "We don't separate again. Ever. I don't care what it costs." "Dominic, I mean it, Angela. These 2 weeks," his voice cracked. "I've survived things that would break most people, but being away from you nearly killed me." Angela kissed him softly. "Then let's make sure Elena Volkov regrets ever threatening us." Dominic's expression shifted into something cold and predatory. "When do we move?" "Tomorrow night. She's meeting with her financial backers at a private club in South Beach. If we hit her there, we take out her entire support system at once." "And you're sure about this?" Angela met his eyes. "I've never been more sure of anything." Dominic studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled, sharp and dangerous. "My wife, the spy." "Your wife, the survivor," Angela corrected. "Same thing." They spent the rest of the night planning. By dawn, they had a strategy. High risk, probably insane, but with enough leverage to bring Elena's empire crashing down. Angela looked at the evidence spread across her tiny apartment, financial records, photographs, recordings, and felt something fierce settle in her chest. She'd started this journey as a woman who apologized for existing. Now she was about to destroy one of the most dangerous criminals on the East Coast. Dominic reached for her hand. Last chance to walk away. Angela laced her fingers through his. "I'm not walking anywhere without you, even if this goes wrong. Especially if it goes wrong." Dominic pulled her close and kissed her forehead. "Then let's go burn her world." Angela smiled against his skin. "Let's." The private club was exactly what Angela expected. glass and chrome and beautiful people pretending money could insulate them from consequences. She and Dominic arrived separately. Angela went in first, wearing a black dress that made her look like every other wealthy woman in Miami. Hair up, minimal makeup, forgettable, invisible. She moved through the crowd with practiced ease, a champagne flute in her hand she never drank from. Elena was on the second floor in a private VIP section guarded by two men with earpieces. Angela waited. 20 minutes later, Dominic entered through the main entrance. He looked devastating in a dark suit, his presence turning heads across the room. He didn't look at Angela, didn't acknowledge her at all. But she felt the moment his eyes found her, a flash of heat that made her skin prickle. Dominic headed straight for the bar. Angela watched him order a drink, scan the room, then make his way toward the stairs. The guard stopped him. Dominic said something Angela couldn't hear. One of the guards made a call. 30 seconds later, they let him through. Angela counted to 60, then she followed. The VIP section was smaller than she expected. Leather couches arranged around a glass table, soft lighting, music muted enough for conversation. Elena sat at the center with four men Angela recognized from her research. Financial backers, the people who gave Elena the capital to run her operations. Dominic stood near the entrance, his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. Elena looked up when Angela entered. For half a second, confusion flickered across her face. Then recognition. Then rage. "You brought a gift," Angela interrupted calmly. She pulled a USB drive from her purse and tossed it onto the glass table. One of the financiers picked it up, frowning. "What is this?" "Every transaction Elena Volkov has made in the last 5 years," Angela said, "including the ones she kept off the books, the ones that prove she's been skimming 20% off the top from all of you." The room went silent. Elena stood slowly, her face carved from ice. "You're lying." "Am I?" Angela turned to the financiers. "Check it, I'll wait." One of them pulled out a laptop. Angela watched Elena's expression shift as the man scrolled through the files, shock giving way to cold calculation. "This is fake," Elena said flatly. "It's not." The financier's voice was tight with fury. "These are my accounts. These withdrawals, I never authorized these." The other three men leaned in, their expressions darkening. Elena's hands clenched at her sides. "You have no idea what you've done." "Yes, I do." Angela's voice was ice. "I've ended you." Elena moved fast. She pulled a gun from somewhere beneath the table and aimed it directly at Angela's chest. The room erupted. Dominic was on her in seconds, his hand closing around Elena's wrist, twisting hard. The gun clattered to the floor. Elena drove her knee into Dominic's wounded side, the injury from 2 weeks ago still healing. Dominic grunted in pain but didn't let go. One of the guards rushed forward. Angela grabbed the champagne bottle from the nearest table and smashed it across his skull. He went down hard. The second guard drew his weapon. Dominic released Elena and dove for the fallen gun. He came up shooting. The guard dropped. The financiers scattered, shouting, scrambling for the exits. Elena lunged for Angela. They hit the floor hard, Elena's hands closing around Angela's throat. "You stupid bitch," Elena hissed. "You think you've won? I'll kill everyone you love. I'll burn everything Dominic's built. Angela drove her knee up into Elena's ribs. Elena's grip loosened. Angela twisted, reversing their positions, her hands closing around Elena's throat. "You threatened the wrong woman," Angela said quietly. Then Dominic was there, pulling her back. "Let her go," he said. Angela released Elena and stood, breathing hard. Elena collapsed against the floor, gasping. Dominic crouched beside her, his expression cold. "You're done, Elena. Your financiers just saw proof you've been stealing from them. Your operation's burned, and if you ever come near my wife again, I'll kill you slowly enough that you'll beg for it to end." He stood and took Angela's hand. They walked out of the club together, leaving Elena broken on the floor behind them. Outside, Miami heat hit them like a wall. Angela's hands were shaking. Dominic pulled her into an alley and kissed her hard. "Are you okay?" he murmured against her mouth. "I just destroyed a criminal empire and got in a fistfight with a woman twice my age." Angela laughed, high and breathless. "I'm better than okay." Dominic's hands framed her face. "You're terrifying." "Good." He kissed her again, slower this time. When they broke apart, Angela rested her forehead against his chest. "What now?" she whispered. Dominic's arms tightened around her. "Now we go home." "Boston?" "Wherever you are." His voice was rough. "That's home." Angela looked up at him, this dangerous man who had married her out of obligation and loved her into something fierce. "Then take me home," she said. Dominic smiled, real and warm and full of promises neither of them would ever break again. Always. They disappeared into the Miami night together, leaving the ashes of Elena's empire smoldering behind them. And for the first time since Elias Mercer died, Angela Vale felt like she could finally breathe. They didn't make it out of Miami clean. Elena's guards caught up to them 6 blocks from the club, 3 SUVs boxing them into an alley with nowhere to run. Dominic shoved Angela behind a dumpster and came up firing with the gun he'd taken from the VIP room. Glass shattered, metal sparked, someone screamed. Angela grabbed a broken pipe from the ground and swung it hard into the kneecap of a man who came around the corner too fast. He went down howling. She hit him again, and again, until he stopped moving. When the silence finally came, 5 men lay scattered across the alley. Dominic was bleeding from a graze across his shoulder. Angela's dress was torn, her knuckles split open. They looked at each other across the carnage, both breathing hard. "We can't stay in Miami," Dominic said. "I know." They stole one of the SUVs and drove north through the night, not stopping until they crossed the state line into Georgia. Dominic pulled into a roadside motel with flickering neon and paid cash for a room. Inside, Angela cleaned his shoulder wound while he sat on the edge of the sagging mattress, staring at nothing. "Talk to me," she said quietly. Dominic's jaw clenched. "I almost lost you tonight. Again." "But you didn't. Only because you fought back." His voice was rough. "If you hadn't learned to defend yourself, if you'd still been the woman I married, I'd be dead," Angela finished. "I know. But I'm not that woman anymore." Dominic caught her wrist gently, pulling her to stand between his knees. "I did this to you." "No. You gave me the tools. I chose what to do with them." "You chose violence." Angela's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I chose survival. There's a difference." Dominic pulled her closer, resting his forehead against her stomach. "I don't know if I've saved you or destroyed you." "Maybe both." Angela's fingers threaded through his hair. "Maybe that's what love looks like in your world." "Our world," Dominic corrected quietly. "It's ours now." Angela's chest tightened. "Then let's make sure we live long enough to keep it." They slept tangled together on top of the covers, too wired to undress, too exhausted to care. When Angela woke hours later, Dominic was already on the phone, his voice low and clipped. "Don't care what it takes. I want every piece of Elena's network dismantled by the end of the week." A pause. "No, Claire. No mercy." She threatened Angela. "That means everyone who worked for her burns." Angela sat up slowly, watching him pace the small room. "I'll be back in Boston by tomorrow," Dominic continued. "Have Vincent secure the penthouse. Full security detail. I'm not taking chances anymore." Another pause. "Because I'm bringing my wife home." He hung up and turned to find Angela watching him. "Claire's handling the cleanup," he said. "Is she angry?" "Probably. I didn't ask her permission before burning Elena's operation to the ground." Dominic sat beside her on the bed. "But she'll get over it. She always does." Angela studied his face, the bruises fading to yellow, the cut above his eyebrow healing, the exhaustion carved into every line. "What happens when we get back to Boston?" "We rebuild." Dominic's hand found hers. "My territory, my reputation, everything that fell apart while I was focused on keeping you alive." "And us?" Dominic turned to look at her fully. "What about us?" "Our agreement expired months ago. We never filed for divorce. Never talked about what happens after—" Angela's voice caught. "After everything stopped being temporary." Dominic's expression softened. "You think any of this has been temporary?" "I don't know what to think anymore." "Then let me make it clear." Dominic pulled her into his lap, his arms circling her waist. "I'm not letting you go. Not in a year. Not in 10 years, not ever. If you want out, you'll have to be the one to walk away. And even then, I'll probably follow you. Angela's eyes burned. That's not healthy. No, Dominic agreed. It's not. But it's the truth. Angela kissed him, slow and deep and full of everything she couldn't say out loud. When they broke apart, Dominic's thumb traced her lower lip. We should get married again. Angela blinked. We're already married. In a courthouse with strangers as witnesses because a dying man asked me to protect you. Dominic's voice was rough. I want to marry you because I choose you, because you're the only person in this world I trust completely, because when you look at me, you see all the broken pieces and stay anyway. Angela's breath caught. Dominic, no big wedding, no family, just us and someone who can make it legal. But I want to stand in front of you and promise that I'm yours for the rest of my life. Not out of obligation, out of love. Angela's vision blurred. You're serious? I've never been more serious about anything. She laughed, a wet, breathless sound. You're asking me to marry you in a roadside motel in Georgia while we're running from assassins. Is that a no? It's a yes, you idiot. Angela kissed him again, harder this time. It's always been yes. Dominic pulled back enough to meet her eyes. Say it again. Yes, I'll marry you. Again. As many times as you want. Dominic's smile was blinding. Once is enough. As long as you mean it. I mean it. They made it back to Boston 2 days later, driving straight through, stopping only for gas and bad coffee. The city looked the same. Gray skies, cold wind, the harbor glittering beneath October clouds. But Angela felt different. Harder. Sharper. Like she'd left pieces of herself scattered across the country and come back reassembled into something new. The penthouse felt both familiar and foreign. Angela stood in the living room, looking out at the view she'd once thought she didn't deserve, and felt Dominic come up behind her. Welcome home, he murmured against her ear. Angela leaned back into his chest. It doesn't feel real yet. What doesn't? That we're actually safe. That Elena's done. That we get to just... She gestured vaguely. Love. Dominic's arms tightened around her. We're not completely safe. We won't ever be. Not in this life. I know. But we're alive and we're together. That's more than most people in my world ever get. Angela turned in his arms to face him. Is it enough? For me? Dominic's expression was open, vulnerable in a way she'd rarely seen. Being with you is more than I ever thought I'd have. Angela kissed him softly. Then let's make it count. The next week passed in a blur of meetings, phone calls, and careful reconstruction. Dominic moved through his world with ruthless efficiency, reclaiming territory, shoring up alliances, making it clear that his brief absence hadn't weakened him. If anything, he came back more dangerous, because now he had something to protect that mattered more than power. Angela watched him work with a kind of awe. This was the man people feared, cold, calculating, capable of devastating violence without hesitation. But at night, when he came home to her, he was someone else entirely. Gentle, careful, almost fragile in the way he held her, like he still couldn't believe she was real. 2 weeks after returning to Boston, Angela came home from grocery shopping to find Aunt Evelyn sitting in the penthouse living room. Angela stopped cold in the doorway, bag still in her hands. Evelyn looked older than Angela remembered, brittle, worn down, her expensive clothes hanging slightly loose. She stood when Angela entered, her expression unreadable. How did you get in here? Angela asked quietly. Dominic let me up. Evelyn's voice was tight. He said I had 5 minutes. Angela set the grocery bags on the counter slowly. What do you want? Evelyn flinched. I came to apologize. The words hung in the air like something toxic. Angela crossed her arms. For what specifically? For humiliating me my entire life? For treating me like an obligation? For making me feel invisible in my own family? Evelyn's face crumpled. For all of it. Angela, I didn't realize... You didn't realize what? That I was a person? That I had feelings? Angela's voice was cold. Or you didn't realize Dominic Vane would actually care about me, and now you're scared of what he might do? Both, Evelyn whispered. I'm terrified. Your cousin lost his business. My husband's under investigation. Our accounts are frozen. And I know it's Dominic. I know he's destroying us because of how we treated you. Angela felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, just a hollow kind of emptiness where rage used to live. You're right, she said finally. He is. Evelyn's hands twisted together. Please, I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm begging you, call him off. We'll never bother you again. No. Evelyn went pale. Angela, you spent 30 years teaching me that I didn't matter, that I was less than, that I should be grateful for whatever scraps you threw my way. Angela's voice was steady, emotionless. Now you get to learn what that feels like. I was wrong. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. I see that now. You were always... Save it. Angela walked to the door and opened it. Your 5 minutes are up. Evelyn stood there for a moment, shaking, tears streaming down her face. Then she walked out without another word. Angela closed the door and leaned against it, her breath coming in short gasps. She'd imagined that moment 1,000 times, confronting her family, making them understand what they'd done to her. But the reality was hollow. Because revenge didn't heal the wounds they'd left. It just made her realize how much of her life she'd wasted wanting them to see her. When Dominic came home that night, he found Angela curled up on the couch, staring at nothing. He sat beside her without a word, pulling her into his arms. Evelyn came by, Angela said quietly. I know. I sent her. Angela pulled back to look at him. Why? Because you needed to see her one last time, to choose whether you wanted closure or revenge. Dominic's hand cupped her face. What did you choose? Neither. Angela's voice cracked. I chose to let her go, not for her sake, for mine. Dominic kissed her forehead. I'm proud of you. Are you still going after them? Do you want me to? Angela thought about it for a long moment. No. Let them rebuild their lives the same way I had to, from nothing. Maybe it'll teach them something. Dominic nodded slowly. I'll make the calls tomorrow. Angela rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. I don't need them anymore. I don't need their approval or their apologies. I have you. I have this. It's enough. More than enough, Dominic murmured into her hair. They sat together in silence, the city glowing beyond the windows, and Angela felt something finally settle inside her. Peace. Real, fragile, hard-won peace. 1 month after returning to Boston, Angela enrolled at Boston University. She'd put it off for weeks, convinced she was too old, too far behind, too everything. But Dominic had filled out the application while she slept and presented it to her over breakfast like it was nothing. You wanted to be a literature professor, he said simply. So be one. Angela stared at the acceptance letter, her hands shaking. I'm 33 years old. So? So I'll be 40 by the time I finish my doctorate. Dominic set down his coffee and looked at her seriously. You'll be 40 anyway. Might as well be 40 with a PhD. Angela laughed, a real laugh that felt like sunlight. You're impossible. I'm right. She started classes in January. It was terrifying. The other students were younger, sharper, quicker to raise their hands. Angela spent the first week convinced she'd made a terrible mistake. But then something shifted. She stopped comparing herself to everyone else and focused on why she was there. Because she loved literature. Because books had saved her when nothing else could. Because for the first time in her life, she was building something for herself instead of surviving whatever life handed her. By the end of her first semester, Angela was thriving. She argued passionately about Faulkner, wrote papers that made her professors take notice, stayed late in the library, surrounded by stacks of books, feeling more alive than she had in years. And every night, she came home to Dominic, who listened to her talk about her classes with the same intensity he brought to business negotiations. You're different, he said one night, watching her pace the living room while explaining her thesis on narrative unreliability in modern fiction. Angela stopped mid-sentence. Different how? Lighter. Dominic's expression was soft. Like you finally figured out you belong somewhere. Angela crossed to him and straddled his lap, her arms looping around his neck. I belong with you. You belong to yourself first. Dominic's hands settled on her hips. I'm just lucky enough to be part of your world now. Angela kissed him slow and deep, pouring everything she felt into it: gratitude, love, wonder that this dangerous man had somehow become her safe place. When they broke apart, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. Marry me. Angela laughed. We're already married, twice technically, if you count the agreement we made in Georgia. I mean for real this time. Witnesses, rings that actually mean something, vows we write ourselves. Dominic's voice was rough. I want to stand in front of people and tell the world you're mine. Angela's breath caught. When? Whenever you want. Tomorrow. Next year. I don't care. As long as it happens. Angela traced the line of his jaw, memorizing every angle. Next spring. Something small. Just the people who matter. Deal. They planned the wedding together over the following months. Simple, intimate, nothing like the courthouse ceremony that had started this entire journey. Claire agreed to be Dominic's witness, though she made it clear she thought the whole thing was sentimental nonsense. Vincent stood beside her, quiet and loyal as always. Angela invited exactly one person. Her academic advisor, Dr. Sarah Chen, a woman in her 60s who had taken Angela under her wing and treated her like the scholar she was becoming, instead of the invisible woman she used to be. The ceremony took place in the Boston Public Garden on a warm April afternoon, beneath flowering trees with the swan boats gliding past in the background. Angela wore a simple cream dress that hit just below her knees. Dominic wore a dark suit that made his eyes look like winter sky. The officiant was a judge Dominic had known for years, someone who asked no questions and kept good secrets. When it came time for vows, Dominic went first. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket, and Angela saw his hands shake slightly. Angela, he started, his voice rough. When Elias asked me to protect you, I thought it would be easy. I'd give you money, set you up somewhere safe, and walk away knowing I'd kept my promise to a man who saved my life. He paused, looking at her with an expression so open it made her chest ache. But the first time you looked at me like I was human instead of a monster, something broke inside me. You saw past the violence, past the reputation, past everything I used to keep people at a distance. And instead of running, you stayed. Dominic's voice cracked. You stayed through blood and bullets and threats. You fought beside me when you should have fled. You made me believe I could be something more than what I was. And I promise you, for the rest of my life, I will protect you, cherish you, and love you with everything I have. Even when it's messy, even when it's dangerous, even when loving you costs me everything. He folded the paper and tucked it back into his pocket. Angela's vision was blurred with tears. She didn't have written vows. She tried to write them a dozen times and failed every time. Because how did you summarize loving someone who had fundamentally changed the trajectory of your entire existence? So she spoke from her heart instead. Dominic, she said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. I spent 32 years being invisible. I learned to take up as little space as possible, to apologize for existing, to believe that I didn't deserve to be seen. She stepped closer, taking both his hands in hers. And then you looked at me like I mattered, like I was worth protecting, worth knowing, worth loving. You gave me space to grow into someone I didn't know I could be. You taught me that strength isn't about being perfect. It's about surviving the worst and choosing to keep going anyway. Angela's grip tightened on his hands. So I promise you this. I will stand beside you through whatever comes. I will fight for us when things get hard. I will love you in all the ways you've never let anyone love you before. And I will never, ever make you feel invisible. Dominic's eyes were bright with unshed tears. The judge cleared his throat. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Again, officially this time. Dominic pulled Angela into his arms and kissed her like they were the only two people in the world. The small group of witnesses applauded. Angela heard Claire mutter something about sentimental idiots, but there was warmth beneath the sarcasm. When they finally broke apart, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. Mine, he whispered. Ours, Angela corrected. We belong to each other now. They celebrated with dinner at a small Italian restaurant in the North End. The six of them crammed around a corner table, wine flowing, laughter echoing off the brick walls. Dr. Chen pulled Angela aside during dessert. You've come a long way since January. Angela smiled. I had good teachers. I'm not talking about academics. Dr. Chen's expression was knowing. You walk differently now, talk differently, like you finally figured out you have the right to take up space. Angela glanced across the table at Dominic, who was deep in conversation with Vincent about something that probably involved violence. He caught her looking and smiled, small and private, just for her. I had help, Angela said quietly. Dr. Chen followed her gaze and nodded slowly. Love looks good on you. It looks terrifying on me, Angela corrected, but I'm learning to live with it. That night, back at the penthouse, Dominic carried Angela over the threshold, even though they'd lived there for over a year. She laughed against his neck. This is ridiculous. It's tradition. We're not traditional people. No, Dominic agreed, setting her down gently in the bedroom. But you deserve all the things you never got the first time. Angela cupped his face, pulling him down for a kiss. I already have everything I need. They made love slowly, carefully, like they were rediscovering each other all over again. And afterward, lying tangled together in the dark, Angela felt something settle deep in her bones. Contentment. Real, lasting, hard-won contentment. What are you thinking? Dominic murmured against her hair. That Elias knew exactly what he was doing. Dominic's arm tightened around her. What do you mean? He didn't just ask you to protect me, he gave us both a second chance. Angela's voice was soft. You were dying inside your empire. I was dying inside my invisibility. And he put us together knowing we'd either destroy each other or save each other. Smart man. The smartest. Angela shifted to look at Dominic's face in the dim light. Do you think he'd be proud of what we became? Dominic considered this for a long moment. I think he'd be relieved and probably terrified of you. Angela laughed. Why terrified? Because you went from invisible to unstoppable in less than 2 years. That's the kind of transformation that scares powerful men. Good. Angela traced the line of Dominic's collarbone. Let them be scared. Dominic pulled her closer, his lips brushing her temple. I love you. I know. Say it back. Angela smiled against his chest. I love you too, even though you're a dangerous criminal who's probably going to get us both killed someday. Probably. Dominic's voice was amused. But at least we'll go down together. Together, Angela agreed. And in the dark, with the city glowing beyond the windows and Dominic's heartbeat steady beneath her ear, Angela finally understood what Elias had given her. Not safety, not security, but the chance to become someone worth fighting for, someone worth dying for, someone worth living for. And that was worth every dangerous, terrifying, beautiful moment that had brought her here. 5 years later, Angela defended her doctoral dissertation in front of a packed auditorium. Her thesis explored invisibility as narrative strategy in contemporary American fiction, a subject she knew intimately from lived experience. Dominic sat in the front row, looking completely out of place among the academics in his dark suit and dangerous presence, but his eyes never left her face. When the committee chair announced that she'd passed with distinction, the room erupted in applause. Angela looked directly at Dominic. He smiled, proud and fierce and full of love. That night, they celebrated at the penthouse with Claire, Vincent, and Dr. Chen. Dr. Angela Vane, Claire said, raising her glass. I never thought I'd see the day Dominic married someone with more degrees than criminal connections. She has both now, Dominic replied calmly. It's impressive. Angela laughed, leaning into his side. I can't take credit for the criminal connections. Those are all you. Joint assets, Dominic said. That's how marriage works. Later, after everyone had left, Angela stood at the windows overlooking the harbor. The same windows she'd stared through 5 years ago, convinced she didn't belong in this world. Dominic came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. What are you thinking about? He asked. How different everything is now. Angela's hand covered his. 5 years ago, I was invisible. Now I have a doctorate, a career, a husband who terrifies half of Boston. It doesn't feel real sometimes. It's real. Dominic's lips brushed her temple. You made it real by refusing to stay small. Angela turned in his arms. We made it real, together. Together, Dominic agreed. They stood there for a long moment, just holding each other, The city spread out below them like a promise. "I have something for you," Dominic said finally. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Angela's breath caught. "Dominic?" "It's not what you think." He opened the box to reveal a gold locket identical to the one he'd given her years ago, the one with Elias's photograph inside. But when Angela opened this one, she found something different. One side held a tiny photograph of her and Dominic on their wedding day in the public garden, kissing beneath flowering trees. The other side was engraved with 4 words. "You were always visible." Angela's vision blurred. "When did you—" "I've been carrying it for months, waiting for the right moment." Dominic's voice was rough. "Today felt right." "Dr. Vane." Angela threw her arms around his neck and kissed him hard. When they broke apart, Dominic fastened the locket around her throat. It rested right above her heart. "Thank you," Angela whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me when no one else did." Dominic cupped her face gently. "You were impossible to miss. Everyone else was just looking in the wrong direction." Angela kissed him again, slow and deep and full of 5 years of love, survival, and transformation. And as she pulled him toward the bedroom, she thought about the woman she used to be. The one who apologized for existing, who made herself small, who believed she didn't deserve to be loved. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone fiercer, someone who had learned that love in the darkest corners of the world wasn't weakness. It was the most dangerous weapon of all, because when you loved someone like Dominic Vane, when you married a monster and taught him to be human, you didn't just survive, you conquered, and Angela had conquered more than she'd ever dreamed possible. Her invisibility had become her power. Her weakness had become her strength. And the man who had married her out of obligation had become the person she couldn't imagine living without. Together, they had built something beautiful out of blood and bullets and broken pieces. Something worth fighting for. Something worth dying for. Something worth living for. And as Dominic pulled her close in the darkness, whispering promises against her skin, Angela finally understood the truth that had been there all along. She had never needed to be saved. She had only needed someone to believe she was worth the fight, and Dominic Vane had proven every single day for 5 years that she was worth everything. The city glowed beyond the windows. The harbor reflected 1,000 lights, and inside the penthouse, 2 people who had found each other in the darkest moment of their lives held each other like they'd never let go. Because they wouldn't. Not through violence, not through threats, not through anything this world could throw at them. They belonged to each other now. Completely, irrevocably, forever. And that was the only truth that mattered.